In our headlines on this Tuesday afternoon, February 14th. The death toll in Turkey and Syria surges past 37,000, while Korea plans to dispatch a second contingent of disaster relief workers and essential supplies this week. Meanwhile, Seoul, Tokyo and Washington reaffirmed commitment to their trilateral security framework to deter Pyongyang's continued belligerence. And Korea's ICT sector posted a trade surplus of some $819 million last month, with exports of mobile phones offsetting sluggish chip sales. We start yet again in Turkey and Syria. Now, as few as they are, stunning stories of survival are keeping first responders and family members holding on to hopes that more people can be saved. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
Each hour, each day, time is running out for rescuers in their desperate search for survivors in earthquake-stricken Turkey and Syria. Over a week after the deadly earthquake struck the two countries, the death toll has now surpassed 37,000. According to Turkish authorities, over 31,000 people have been killed in Turkey, while some 6,000 were killed in northwest Syria. The latest earthquake is now the sixth deadliest natural disaster in the 21st century. Experts say the number of lives lost could surpass Pakistan's earthquake in 2005, which killed over 73,000. However, despite the grim figures and time running out for rescuers, stories of miracles continue to surface. That includes a 13-year-old boy who was rescued after being trapped under rubble for 182 hours. Although in small numbers, rescuers have found other survivors a week after the earthquake. However, due to the sheer danger of moving rubble with survivors trapped underneath, the rescue operation must be done with great care.
Building inside is super dangerously collapsed, so you cannot just go inside, and you should be really careful also not to harm the people inside. So we are like we say in Turkey, we are digging with our nails. One by one, slowly, slowly, slowly.
Meanwhile, amid the ongoing search and rescue operation, a cholera outbreak is becoming a problem in Syria. Cholera has been spreading in Syria since last September, but now at a much faster pace due to the lack of clean water in the earthquake-hit region. In response, the WHO is relaxing cholera vaccine administration regulations to combat a drug shortage in the hopes of easing the situation in Syria. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And in related news, come Thursday this week, a second contingent, this time with more relief supplies, will be departing for Turkey as the top office here has renewed its pledge to ease the plight of the people there. Our Yoon has more on the pledge and the aid.
President Yoon has called on the government to mobilize all available resources to secure maximum relief supplies for Turkey. The president vowed to take the lead in helping a close ally overcome the sorrow of the past week's destruction and loss of lives, calling Turkey a brother nation. On Monday, the presidential office announced that the government has secured 150 tents and 2,200 blankets to use in the cold weather. These will be flown to Turkey this Thursday on a military aircraft. Also on board that flight will be a second group of South Korean rescue workers. The government has recruited over 370 medical personnel to be sent over to Turkey, with 29 of them set to depart this week.
Around 23 million people are expected to have suffered from this incident, so we have to urgently secure tents to temporarily shelter people in the cold weather. There is also a serious shortage of medical supplies and equipment.
Aid is pouring in from other countries too. Vietnam has donated more than 2 tons of medical equipment and supplies in coordination with Turkey's AFAD disaster management agency. This is the first time Vietnam has deployed search and rescue forces in coordination with other countries following a natural disaster. Among leaders visiting the quake site, Greece's foreign minister was the first among his European colleagues. The visit came despite the two countries having been at odds for decades and was greeted warmly by his Turkish counterpart. The Greek government is also preparing to send cruise ships to help accommodate the tens of thousands of people left homeless after the deadly shocks. The World Bank has already pledged roughly $1.8 billion of funding for Turkey. But according to disaster assessment reports, losses caused by the twin earthquakes will come to nearly $84.1 billion, a big hit to the Turkish economy. Yoon, Arirang News.
Also here in the country, the public is going out of its way to further promote the acts of philanthropy across the world that have been shipping supplies of basic necessities to people in Turkey. Our Song Yujin has this report.
Hundreds of thousands have lost their homes, tens of thousands are injured, and the death toll continues to rise from the earthquakes that struck Turkey and Syria on February 6th. Search and rescue teams from around the world are working around the clock to save lives. But freezing temperatures and lack of necessary infrastructure are making things difficult. Even from thousands of kilometers away, people in South Korea are extending their support to brother country Turkey, a country that dispatched the fourth largest number of soldiers during the Korean War. Donations have been pouring in after the Turkish embassy in Seoul started a relief campaign last week.
So I'm currently at a logistics center located in South Korea's port city of Incheon, and as you can see, there are a lot of bags and boxes, stacks of them continuously streaming in. They contain much needed winter clothes, sleeping bags, tents, blankets, diapers, anything that those struck by the earthquake need to survive.
Anyone who wishes to take part just has to pack up what they want to send, nothing used but new, write down what's inside and aid material Turkey on the box, and ship it to the address below.
We're seeing so many boxes coming in packed with relief supplies. Our Turkish community in Korea has come here to help the embassy organize and classify the items and send them to the airport.
The embassy has also opened a bank account for monetary donations. And there are also those who've taken matters into their own hands, like the students of Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Students have set up a fundraising account and installed boxes on campus where people can drop off relief supplies.
We're the only Turkish language major in Korea, and we've interacted a lot with Turkey and its people in the past, so we thought about what we can do.
We raised more than 8 million Korean won, or around $6,300 just last week. Dozens of boxes containing blankets and padded jackets are stacked on the first floor of our main building.
The money raised and supplies will be handed over to the Turkish embassy in Seoul at the end of this month. At times like this, international solidarity is needed for swift recovery and restoration. 송유진, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, New Zealand has declared a national state of emergency as it reels from the aftermath of Cyclone Gabrielle, which pounded the country's north. The declaration applies to 6 regions, including New Zealand's largest city, Auckland, where 44,000 homes have been left with no power. Accordingly, dozens of evacuation centers have been set up in the city. Now, this is only the 3rd time the country has declared a state of emergency in its history. Severe flooding has washed away homes, and strong winds are hampering helicopter rescue operations from reaching people seeking refuge on rooftops. Over in the U.S., diplomats from Seoul, Tokyo and Washington have renewed calls for Pyongyang to surrender its nuclear ambitions. Also on the sidelines of that trilateral talk, delegates from here and neighboring Japan sat down to address the differences over compensation for forced labor victims. Our Foreign Ministry correspondent Choi Min-jung has more.
South Korea and Japan's first vice foreign ministers sat down in Washington on Monday to discuss the ongoing dispute over compensation for Korean victims of Japan's wartime forced labor. After the meeting, South Korea's first vice foreign minister Cho Hyun-dong told reporters that the two sides have yet to reach an agreement. Cho said that more consultations will be needed with Japan, calling the situation a very sensitive issue for both countries. Last month, Seoul unveiled plans to compensate the victims through its own public foundation. But this prompted backlash from the victims, who insist the issue cannot be resolved without sincere apologies and participation from the Japanese companies involved. Pundits say talks on the matter will likely continue on the sidelines of a foreign ministers' meeting at the Munich Security Conference later this week. The latest talks followed a trilateral meeting between the vice foreign ministers of South Korea, the United States, and Japan, where the 3 countries reaffirmed their commitment to cooperating against threats from North Korea. Speaking at a joint press briefing after the sit-down in Washington, South Korea's representative said they will enhance their security cooperation to counter growing threats from Pyongyang.
First of all, we committed ourselves to respond firmly to any North Korean provocation and work toward complete denuclearization of North Korea. Indeed, Peace without denuclearization is fake peace.
Standing united, our nations will deter the DPRK and urge it to give up its nuclear weapons program and abide by its obligations under UN Security Council resolutions.
The remarks come as Sherman said North Korea continued to threaten South Korea and the world with an unprecedented number of ballistic missile launches last year. Stressing their trilateral relationship is strong and growing stronger day by day, Sherman reiterated that their alliance is both ironclad and vital to regional and global security. Choi Min-dong, Arirang News.
And Korea and NATO held their first ever staff-level dialogue amid tensions on the Korean Peninsula. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff says the two-day meeting here in Seoul ended on this Tuesday following talks on ways to bolster cooperation and to chart a future path in partnership. The NATO delegation also visited the joint security area near the inter-Korean border, and NATO representative Lieutenant General Francesco Diella said the visit was symbolic to laying the groundwork for future Korea-NATO relations. The next Director General level talks will take place in Belgium next year. The balloon saga between the US and China has taken a fresh twist, with Beijing accusing Washington of similar intrusions over the past year. The US has been quick to shoot down that accusation. Our senior foreign affairs correspondent Peunji reports.
China has accused the U.S. of illegally flying high-altitude balloons into its airspace multiple times since January last year. The accusation made by the Chinese Foreign Ministry comes after China said it's preparing to shoot down an unidentified object flying near its ports.
Just last year, U.S. high-altitude balloons illegally entered Chinese airspace more than 10 times without the approval of the relevant Chinese authorities.
Washington immediately denied the allegations and said that it's open to talks with Beijing.
There are no U.S. government balloons over the People's Republic of China. None. Zero. Period.
Also, the White House dismissed recent speculation that aliens may be behind the recent high-altitude object it shot down, after a U.S. Air Force general had said he would not rule out aliens or any other explanation yet. Over the weekend, the American military shot down 3 separate aerial objects, about a week after shooting down a Chinese spy balloon off the east coast of the U.S.
Again, there is no indication of aliens or terrestrial activity with these recent takedowns.
Meanwhile, a U.S. general said the American Air Force has also observed a number of high-altitude Chinese surveillance balloons flying over the Middle East and Afghanistan in recent years. But he added that they were not closely inspected because they did not appear to pose a threat. The New York Times reported that a Beijing-based company co-founded by a Chinese top airship scientist either launched or planned to launch high-altitude balloons, according to the company's website in 2022. It also said the company's goal was to create an airborne signals network in China using stationary balloons, and it aims to complete a, quote, global near-space information network by 2028, without elaborating on what that meant. Peunji, Arirang News.
All the way from space, Korea's lunar probe has shared its first pictures of the moon's surface, and our Cho Sang-min shares them with us to take a look.
South Korea's lunar orbiter Danuri sent back its first photos of the moon's surface on Monday, having entered the moon's orbit a month ago. As the first orbiter to be launched by Korea, Danuri reportedly entered the selenocentric orbit on December 27th after a 145-day journey through space. On the way there, it required about a month to switch its system into the main operation mode to begin its lunar mission. Danuri is currently orbiting the moon 100 kilometers above its surface, and the pictures it sent were taken at Valles Rada on January 5th, the Sea of Rains on January 10th, and the Ocean of Storms on January 13th. While revealing the photos, the Korea Aerospace Research Institute said it has found no errors with the orbiter's functioning since it began carrying out its main task on February 4th. The orbiter is designed to use its instruments to measure and evaluate the moon's terrain, magnetic strength, gamma rays, and other factors until the end of this year. The photos are expected to pave the way for more space projects by Korea that will identify potential landing sites for additional missions in the future. 조성민, Arirang News.
On the economic front, Korea's information and communication technology sector posted a trade surplus of around $890 million last month, despite a dramatic drop in exports. According to the Trade Ministry on Tuesday, exports of ICT products amounted to some $13.1 billion in January, down 33.2% on year amid lackluster demand for semiconductors. In fact, chip exports fell over 43% to about $6.1 billion. In sharp contrast, exports of smartphones soared over 24% amid the release of Samsung's Galaxy S23 lineup. Car makers Hyundai and Kia posted stellar sales in India last month, driven by their SUVs. According to the Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers and Hyundai Motor Group on Tuesday, Hyundai and Kia combined sold nearly 79,000 units in January, up more than 24% on year, which is well above the previous monthly record noted in October 2020. Leading the sales were those of Hyundai's Creta SUV, which jumped 52% on year to more than 15,000 units. Also, Hyundai and Kia's combined market share in India rose 1.5% from a year earlier to 22.6% last month. In other news, the amount of nuclear energy generated here in the country last year hit an all-time high. It also rebounded to levels seen before the introduction of the nuclear phase-out policy of the former Moon administration. According to KEPCO on Tuesday, the country generated 176,000 gigawatt-hours last year, a surge of 11.4% on year. It also marked the first time that it surpassed the 170,000 gigawatt-hour mark. In addition, the power generated from nuclear power plants last year accounted for 29.6% of all power generated, the highest since the year 2016.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Portugal, an investigation has found that over the past 70 years, almost 5,000 children have been sexually abused by members of Portugal's Catholic Church. A report by an independent commission on Monday said at least 4,815 children had been abused. It noted that the victims were mostly male and between the ages of 10 and 14 when they were abused mainly by priests. The commission, launched by the Portuguese Episcopal Conference, added that the number of cases is the absolute minimum and that the findings are just the tip of the iceberg. In response, Portuguese bishops are set to meet in March to look at ways to prevent future abuses and provide justice to victims. The report comes after the Portuguese Catholic Church was hit by allegations last year of covering up cases of sexual abuse by still active bishops. Moving over to Moldova now, where the country's president, Maia Sandu, has accused Russia of attempting to overthrow its government. On Monday local time, Sandu said Moscow allegedly planned a coup d'etat using violent protests appearing as the opposition, but actually carried out by foreign nationals or organized crime groups. A document detailing the plan was reportedly intercepted by Ukrainian intelligence officials and was later confirmed by Moldovan authorities. The news comes as the former Soviet Union state looks to join the EU after becoming a candidate last year. The country has recently struggled with gas supply shortages, power cuts, and an influx of Ukrainian refugees, as well as tensions with Transnistria, a pro-Moscow breakaway region. Shifting to football now, where Czech international Jakub Jankto has officially come out as gay. The 27-year-old midfielder made the announcement on his Instagram account on Monday, saying that he no longer wants to hide himself. According to the BBC, he is the first current international in men's football to publicly announce that he is gay. Jankto currently plays as a midfielder for Czech club Sparta Prague, on loan from Spanish La Liga club Getafe. Both teams have expressed their support for the player, as have the Czech national team and other footballers and football organizations. Jankto has played 45 times for the Czech Republic, scoring 4 goals. And finally, for those wanting to get over an ex this Valentine's Day, zoos across the US have been giving people the chance to have vegetables, bugs, and even carcasses be named after their former partners and then fed to animals. One location in Pennsylvania has a $5 bug-off package where the bug feeding process is filmed and then uploaded to social media. Meanwhile, another zoo in Texas dubbed their campaign "Cry Me a Cockroach." The trend is part of fundraising efforts that first came about 3 years ago when zoos saw less visits after the outbreak of COVID-19. Zoos also tend to make fewer ticket sales in the colder months. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. After a spring-like Monday, morning temperatures in Korea have dropped to 3 to 8 degrees lower than yesterday, and feels like temperatures in Seoul dropped to near -5 degrees. While highs will be 1 to 4 degrees lower than yesterday in most areas, but still above norms for the capital region, but slightly lower in southern parts of the country today. But due to the recent mild temperatures, it could feel much chillier, so do dress accordingly. But much improved air quality is welcomed by all of us under bright skies today. Meanwhile, mountainous regions in Gangwon-do province have seen 10 centimeters of snowfall since yesterday. Well, it stopped snowing for now, but do expect to see on and off snow through tomorrow afternoon, possibly up to 10 centimeters of heavy snowfall. And Jeju Island looks like receiving frequent rainfall or snowfall this week, and the rest of the country will be under bright skies. The seasonal cold will fade as we head into the weekend. With that in mind, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
And that wraps up our afternoon newscast. But do stay with us for our panel session coming up right after this break. Thank you for now.